Hello everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact Video Series. My name is Ryan Duffy, and I'm the director of the museum, and this week felt only appropriate, with it being at the height of the holiday season, to talk about some of the sweet treats that we often get and buy around this time of year. And Batavia has had its fair history of candy makers and candy shops, dating back well into even the 19th century. But we're going to talk about two in particular that lasted over 100 years in some cases, or are still going actually up to this point. And that is the J. Kustas and Sons candy shop, also known as the Palace of Sweets, and Oliver's, which still thrives today. So we're going to talk about some of the history of the companies and how they got their start from humble beginnings and ended up growing to larger companies with wide range of sweet treats for everyone, and go through their importance to the community and how they became mainstays here in Batavia. The first candy shop we'll talk about is the J. Kustas and Sons candy shop, or later known as the Palace of Sweets. But it actually goes back to 1895 when Louis Kustas came to Batavia from Greece. And about 10 years later, he bought some interest in a local candy store at 78 Main Street, the Greek and American Fruit Candy Store, which was actually owned by another couple from Greece. But later that year, he actually branched off on his own and bought a company at 88 Main Street, which became known as the Kustas Candy Kitchen. And it was here that he would run that operation with his brother James, who came later that year from Greece. Now, this company would stay in the family business up until urban renewal had the building torn down, so nearly 7 decades later. But in the early years, they had a self-playing piano and ice cream parlor, and they also had a restaurant built in with the candy store. They offered specialties in peanut clusters, chocolate maple clusters, fudge, bonbons, ice cream. All sorts of different candied and sweet treats were offered there. In 1917, James became the proprietor of the business and operated for about 4 decades on his own. And it operated in that spot well until the 1970s. Louis Kustas actually died in 1961, and it fell to his brother James. But when James retired, his son George actually took over the business and operated it at 88 Main Street. However, with urban renewal, the building was torn down, and they had to find a new location. And what they ended up moving into was the Genesee Country Mall, or Batavia City Center as it's known today. And it operated there for several decades on its own, up until the very recent years when it was finally forced to close. But the name of the Palace of Sweets and the Kustas name still continues on, though just not in Batavia, as they have stores open in Clarence and the McKinley Mall in Hamburg still. So you can still get the Kustas sweet treats, even though not here in Batavia. So now we'll jump over to Oliver's Candies, which actually started all the way back in 1932. It was started by a man named Joseph Oliver, which was actually a home industry, and he began making water blanched peanuts, not candies actually, and sold them in a push cart that he took around town. And he actually made these at home when he lived above the Denver garage on West Main Street. Soon after, he was assisted by William and Rose Betteridge, who assisted him in making his peanuts and taking them around town. In 1934, he actually moved his family and his business to Montclair Avenue and bought a house at 211 West Main Street for his shop. And this is actually where Oliver's is still today. He soon built a candy kitchen behind, and a little later bought the house to the east of it and had it torn down so he could make a parking lot for his shop. By then, Oliver's was a very busy candy shop and was actually bringing quite a bit of profits, and continued to make some of his famous products like his cashew glaze and hostess squares. 1960, he sold the business to a Harold Oskamp and went into retirement, though he passed away the next year. Mr. Oskamp was actually a salesman for a chocolate company in Buffalo, and he brought that experience to Oliver's and added to the varieties of candy. And but continued the tradition of the high quality. The Betteridges worked at the shop until 1985 when they finally retired from the business. And it was under this new directive that the ribbon candy became a very popular treat, especially around Christmas time, so right now. And it was Mr. Oskamp that built the new front of the shop in 1965 to make it look like the Swiss Chalet that we all know today. He owned the business until 1979 when he sold it to Genesee Farms Incorporated, and they owned it for some time, and the current owners, the Quincy family, actually bought it in 1998 and have continued to expand it. Actually, in 2018, they built the Sweet Life Country Store in Oliver's Candy Factory out in Elba, where they actually make most of the candy now. But they've been able to expand and continue their business and continue to be a Batavia landmark for over 80 years now. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact video series, and you enjoyed taking a step back in time to the old-fashioned candy shops and seeing them progress into the future and present day. It's always nice to talk about candy. Who doesn't love talking about candy, especially around Christmas time, as it's one thing we all think of when December comes around. But if you've enjoyed this video, please check out the rest of them on our YouTube channel, Holland Land Office Museum. You can check out the whole playlist of our Artifact video series, as well as other videos of other events there. And if you like any of them, please like and subscribe, as it helps the channel out and gets you notified ever sooner when we do release new videos. But as always, the best way to experience the museum is to come and see us for yourselves in person here, and we'll be happy to share even more stories with you about all the things that we have, all the stories we have to tell here at the museum.